Everyone, welcome to my channel. This one I called Fake It Till You Make It because, well, nothing really went right, but I kept in the game and I kept trying and trying. Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. I learned a lot in this video. So this is the Highland napkin. And when Nicole sent this to me, I looked at it and I thought, oh, what would I ever do with this? It's not a pretty butterfly or flower. And then I got the idea about a bad hair day. I mistakenly thought this was a buffalo. It is a Highland cow, I learned. But, it looks like it's having a bad hair day. So I went with the sentiment that goes with it, and I thought I'd make a funny card. So I took off the excess plies using a piece of masking tape to help me, and there's usually two excess plies. And now I am water cutting around the cow. And, somebody asked, like, when would you use the water cutting versus the repositionable glue technique for cutting out the elements out of the napkins? And a lot of times I find this just easier, but especially when it's got fur or hair and the edges aren't exactly precise, you can get away with water cutting very easily. So this page really challenged me because I wasn't sure what color background to go with. I have brown, so I thought, blues and browns go really well. So that was my plan, and I did stick with that plan. I wanted to do some removing paint through the stencil. So I was putting a coat of gesso on my substrate. Now I'm using 6x6 folded card from the Crafter's Workshop here, but this could just as easily have been a art journal page or a canvas. I'm mixing light blue permanent and white gesso with a little bit of cobalt turquoise. I want that mottled look. And then I'm going to use this buffalo plaid stencil. This is a sign stencil from the TCW. And I really like the pattern, but it really didn't work for removing paint through the stencil. So not all stencils work the same with the different techniques, and it's a bit of trial and error, so don't give up. So I plop in the paint again, but I want to continue to add some more interest to the background. So I grab my foliage cube from Stampendous, and I'm putting brown paint on this. The brown because brown and blue, and it matches the brown that's on the napkin. And I just want to add some pattern, some small scale pattern to the background. And I really like how this looks. In fact, there are so many times on this card that I like how it looks, and I will use what I've learned for something else. Now, I could have put the cow down here, and I think that would have been good. But I had it in my head that I needed to use that buffalo plaid, or I wanted to use that buffalo plaid stencil. So after giving it a quick dry, I taped down the stencil. My card, because it got a little wet, is kind of buckling, so I wanted to make sure it was flat so I would get you know, a good stencil. I'm taping it all down. Oops, sorry. Don't need to see the top of my head. And I'm stenciling with black acrylic paint. And I'm going fairly slow, and I'm taking the paint, putting it on the makeup sponge, patting that off on my craft sheet, and then stenciling. Slower is better. I like the contrast of this. I'm thinking maybe I'll leave it just on part of it and then the rest will be the same. And then, you know what, I really like it, so I'm going to go the entire front of the card. And I've sped this up, but I did go slow and careful to get the best kind of stenciling. Loving the look of this plaid on here. but it didn't work with my focal image. So I decided, I'm going to just take some gesso and block off a middle area a little bit, break up that plaid. And I really like how that looks with just the corners of the plaid there, and the middle would be something else. And I test out my focal image and not loving it. So you see why I called this one Fake It Till You Make It, because I was just determined to just keep going. It's only paper and paint. And, the joy comes in the process. I'm covering the white with the light blue permanent, thinking maybe that will help. Troubleshooting 101, thinking, well, maybe if I put it at a different angle, maybe it would look better. Still not loving it. So I ended up covering that all up. It's not close up here, but you could see some of those layers, that grunge peeking through. So I covered this with the light blue permanent, and I added some splotchy browns in there, and I'm liking the look of that. And then I think about this scattered branches stencil, and I stencil with brown. So I'm still, I'm fighting to keep that color scheme that I wanted, the blue and the brown. And I'm leaving out that one area because that's where my focal image is going to go. Okay, I think we've finally turned the corner. So I'm giving that a dry, liking the look of this, but I want to add a little bit more. So I grab my copper paint, and I'm going to go over the brown stenciled area with that copper. Now that color is in that cow focal image. And ooh, loving this. It's kind of mottled. It kind of resembles the colors that are on the focal image. The branches go with it. It goes with the sentiment that I've picked, kind of because bad hair days happen. Now I'm edging with the brown paint, and I'm finally happy. So if a page doesn't work out, just keep trying. The worst thing that can happen is it's going to end up in the garbage, or you're going to cut it up and use it on a different page. But maybe, just maybe, you can save it. And there's always, always, always a coat of gesso. Speaking of gesso, here I'm just lightening the area where my focal image is going to be glued down. I don't want to see those branches on coming through that focal image. I don't want to see blue distorting the color. I want to keep that brown of the focal image there. So I dry it and I add more white gesso just to block it off. And I put some fluid matte medium on it, and I'm gluing down my focal image. The horn kind of got mixed up with some of those branches. I'm noticing right now at the top, you're losing, where the horns are because the branches kind of float in there. So I come in with the blue and I knock back some of the branches just so I can see where the horns are. This background is very grungy, and I love it for that. So that'll definitely be a color combination technique with the brown and the copper on top that I'll use again. I'm just adding a few marks where the scattered branches stenciling wasn't, just to touch it up. Adding back some of my shading now that I've put the focal image in and everything. And I grab my liner brush and I'm just adding a few hairs to it. Then I get the sentiment typed and I get the right size, but I decide to remove a lot of the white. And I'm gluing that down with the fluid matte medium. I picked a font here that was fairly bold because the background is fairly busy, so I thought I needed something that was a little stronger. A fine font wouldn't work as well, I don't think. After drying it, I heat up the tape to remove it. That way I don't pull any of the paper off. And I'm outlining the sentiment with my black Posca pen. So here's what you can do with a color scheme that is new to you, not your usual pick, and a focal image that isn't your usual thing. Challenge yourself, do something different. You may end up with a lot of twists and turns, as I did, but in the end, you're going to learn a few things and win. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, go get creative.